Imagine a jetliner falling from 35,000 feet, its fuselage torn apart on impact, engines scattered across miles of wreckage. In the midst of that devastation, one small orange cylinder survives intact. Most people think black boxes are just tough devices bolted into the tail, but the truth is far more deliberate. Consider the specifications. They must withstand 3,400 Gs of impact force, survive a fire at 100 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, and remain intact under the pressure of 20,000 feet of ocean water. These aren't accidental features, they are requirements written into law by aviation authorities worldwide. So why the tail? Because statistics show the tail section is the most likely part of an aircraft to survive a crash. Engineers mount the recorders there deliberately, betting that even if the wings tear off and the cockpit crumples, the tail will hold. It is a calculated gamble, and it is paid off in thousands of investigations. The tail's advantage comes from a brutal truth of physics. In a crash, the front crumples first, absorbing energy. The wings tear away, but the empennage is often the last to break and the most intact. That's why engineers mount the recorder as far aft as possible, right against the rear pressure bulkhead. This spot absorbs the least impact force, and it's reinforced. The mounting rack itself is built to withstand 3,400 Gs, anchoring the box through the violence of a crash. But placement alone isn't enough. The recorder must survive fire that melts aluminum and pressure that crushes steel. That's why the box is encased in a stainless steel or titanium shell, wrapped in layers of aerogel insulation, a fortress small enough to hold in your hands. How does a device survive forces that tear a 300-ton airliner apart? The answer begins with a number, 3,400 Gs, the impact the black box must withstand, according to FAA Technical Standard Order TSO C124A. But impact alone isn't the only threat. After the crash, fire often engulfs the wreckage. So the same standard demands the recorder survive 100 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, hot enough to melt aluminum, but not the steel and ceramic layers protecting the memory chips. And if the crash site is underwater, as it was for Air France Flight 447, the box must endure the crushing pressure of the deep sea. The standard requires submersion at 20,000 feet for 30 days, a test that AF 447's recorders passed, though it took 2 years to find them. So how is this engineering achieved? Inside the orange shell, a solid-state memory board is encased in a block of high-temperature insulation, then wrapped in a stainless steel or titanium armor. The result? A device that can be crushed, burned and drowned. And still speak. How did the black box become so robust? It evolved from a fragile reel of magnetic tape to the solid-state fortress we know today. The answer begins in the 1950s, when Australian scientist David Warren first recorded cockpit voices on a simple wire recorder, a device that could barely survive a hard landing, let alone a crash. Tape had a fatal flaw. It could melt in fire, snap in impact, or be erased by water. By the 1990s, engineers had a better idea. Solid-state memory. The same technology in your smartphone. No moving parts, no vulnerable reels, just data etched into silicon that could survive the heat and pressure that destroyed everything else. That shift meant black boxes could now record far more data, 25 hours of flight parameters, instead of a few hours on tape, and they could survive the very standards that had destroyed their predecessors: extreme impact, intense fire, and crushing deep-sea pressure. The solid-state recorder was not just an upgrade, it was a rebirth. But once the box is buried in wreckage or lost at sea, how do searchers ever find it? That is the job of a small device attached to the recorder, the underwater locator beacon. It is designed to answer one question: where? The beacon emits a pulse at 37.5 kHz once per second for at least 30 days after immersion. This signal can be detected by sonar equipment from up to 3,000 meters away. But there is a catch. The beacon only activates when it hits water, so it cannot help if the crash site is on land. And so the beacon becomes a race against time. If the wreckage lies beyond the beacon's range or the battery dies before searchers arrive, the box becomes a silent stone on the ocean floor. That is why recovery teams deploy listening arrays immediately, hoping to catch the pulse before it fades. What happens when the fortress fails? When the black box, designed to survive hell itself, is swallowed by the abyss, and the pings grow silent before anyone can follow them. That is the question that haunts two of aviation's greatest mysteries. In 2009, Air France Flight 447 vanished over the Atlantic. The wreckage lay at 13,000 feet, well within the black box's depth rating. But the underwater locator beacons, designed to ping at 37.5 km for 30 days, had long since fallen silent. It took 2 years to find them. And then there is Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The recorders were built to the same unbreakable standards, but the aircraft vanished into the southern Indian Ocean. And despite the most expensive search in history, the beacons were never heard. The boxes were never recovered. This case shows that even a fortress can be lost if the ocean is vast and time runs out. The lesson is sobering. The recorder is not invincible. It is a testament to human ingenuity, but also a reminder that the ocean is vast and time is never on our side. When the pings stop, the story may remain untold forever. So what does a black box actually record? The answer is 2 streams of data, one mechanical, one human. The flight data recorder captures 25 hours of parameters: speed, altitude, heading, engine performance, control positions. It is a silent log of every movement the aircraft makes. But numbers alone cannot tell the full story. That is why the cockpit voice recorder preserves the last 2 hours of audio. Every word, every alarm, every silence. As one NTSB investigator put it, the CVR is the only witness that never forgets. Together, these 2 recorders allow investigators to reconstruct the final moments of a flight with astonishing precision. They cross-reference the mechanical data with the human voices, matching a control input to a pilot's command, a warning alarm to a reaction. This is how a crash becomes a lesson. And yet, despite the lost beacons of AF447 and MH370, the recorder remains the single most powerful tool investigators have. Over 90% of all recorders are recovered after crashes. And when they are found, they speak with a clarity no human witness ever could. The cockpit voice recorder captures every word, every alarm, every hesitation in the final moments. The flight data recorder logs hundreds of parameters: altitude, airspeed, engine thrust, control inputs, for the last 25 hours. Together they reconstruct the accident second by second. But why that specific impact threshold? That number comes from analysing decades of crash data. Engineers measured the highest deceleration ever recorded in a survivable crash, and then added a safety margin. The result is a threshold that ensures the box survives even in the worst-case scenario. To certify a black box, manufacturers don't just simulate. They destroy prototypes. They fire them from air cannons into concrete walls, bake them in furnaces, and submerge them in pressure chambers. Only after surviving these trials does a recorder earn its place on an aircraft. Inside the fortress lies the memory board, a stack of silicon wafers that store data as electrical charges. Unlike a hard drive, there are no spinning disks or moving heads. This solid-state design means the data is written directly to the chips, making it far more resistant to shock and heat. Despite the name, black boxes are actually bright orange. The colour was chosen for high visibility against wreckage and debris. The outer shell is also coated with heat-resistant paint and retro-reflective tape, making it easier to spot in low light or underwater. The underwater locator beacon is powered by a lithium battery that must last at least 30 days, but cold ocean temperatures can drain the battery faster. That's why search teams race against time. Every day the signal weakens, and after a month, the beacon falls silent forever. Sometimes the beacon never activates, if the crash is on land, or if the box is buried too deep for the water sensor to trigger. In those cases, searchers must rely on visual clues, metal detectors, and sheer luck. The recorder becomes a needle in a vast haystack. Engineers are now working on deployable recorders that eject from the aircraft before impact, floating on the surface and transmitting a GPS signal. Some proposals include streaming data to satellites in real time. The recorder may soon be unbreakable in an entirely new way. So next time you board a plane, look toward the tail. That little orange box tucked behind the bulkhead is a fortress of memory. It is not just built to survive, it is built to speak. And in that speaking, it makes every flight after a crash just a little bit safer.